Hello everyone, welcome to today's video which covers how MITRE ATT&CK is used in real VAPT assessments with practical Kali Linux examples. We will do professional vulnerability discovery and map findings to attack techniques visually, safely, without any exploitation. MITRE ATT&CK is a free knowledge base of real-world attacker tactics and techniques. It has 14 main tactics in the enterprise metrics like reconnaissance. We also have initial access, persistence, privilege escalation, and lateral movement, as well as others. VAPT pros use it to go beyond listing vulnerabilities. We map discoveries to attack paths, prioritize business risks, and think like defenders. Now, let's apply this in my isolated lab. In real VAPT, we discover with tools like Nmap, then map to attack to show attack chains. So we are going to demo 3 examples: misconfigured SSH, default credentials, and outdated web app. For each, I will show discovery in Kali, then switch to the attack navigator to map techniques visually. So in my lab, my Kali and my Metasploitable are running already. My Kali, the IP address is 192.168.56.103, while in my Metasploitable, which is the target, my IP address is 192.168.56.102. If you check clearly, it is written here, and then this is for my Kali, as you can see too here. So we are going to run the command now. So I'll type nmap asv 192.168.56.102. So this is going to show us open SSH, allowing password authentication, which can be common misconfiguration. So it ran successfully, and as you can see our results, we have 21 TCP open, FTP, etc. etc. So for our SSH, as you can see, open SSH is actually open, and it can lead to common misconfiguration. So let's run another command. So we say ssh-v. This is the output. So I typed this command. Here we see the verbose SSH output. It tried public keys first, which is the normal behavior, then fell back to password authentication, and it succeeded. I was asked to input my password, which I did here, and I was able to log in successfully. This confirms the SSH service on port 22 is allowing password logins with the default credentials ms-fatmin. Here's this. This is a classic misconfiguration, weak authentication on an exposed service. So we'll exit this later, but I'll need to show you my mapping first. Okay, here. So on my MITRE ATT&CK, now let's map this finding to the MITRE ATT&CK framework using the navigator. So I already have a layer open for this lab. On reconnaissance, active scanning, and then under initial access, you can see exploit public facing. So this shows that our reconnaissance is active. It also shows how a simple open port from reconnaissance can chain directly to an attacker gaining a foothold. So what is the business risk here? Unauthorized remote access could lead to data theft ransomware deployment, or full network compromise. What is the recommended mitigation? Ensure you disable password authentication, enforce SSH keys only, install fail to ban to block brute force attempts, and monitor authentication logs. So we'll switch back to our Linux now, and I'll exit. Okay, we're back to Akali. Now the second example was exposed service with default credentials. It can be in Metasploitable to Apache Tomcat, which runs on port 8180, not 8080. So I ran this command after I exited the SSH session. Here, the Nikto scan on port 8180, which is Tomcat default HTTP port in Metasploitable 2. So as you can see, the server identified as Apache Coyote 1.1, and then which is Tomcat here, Apache Tomcat install. So Nikto also flags missing security headers like Xframe options and X content type options, and notes that dangerous methods like put and delete are allowed. These are common in default Tomcat installations. What is mostly important is that the manager interface is typically exposed in these setups with default credentials Tomcat. So we don't attempt to log in, we only enumerate safely. So what we'll do next is to confirm that the manager path exists with a header check. So let's confirm that now. This is the next command I imputed, which is used to confirm that the manager path exists with a header check. So this is my output. As you can see, we get a 401 unauthorized response with a basic authentication challenge for Tomcat manager here. So this confirms that the admin interface is actually live and waiting for credentials, exactly the weak default credential scenario we are demonstrating. So what do I do next? I'll switch to my MITRE ATT&CK navigator briefly here. So in the navigator, I'll search for a particular number under valid account in the initial access. This is our valid account here. And then under external remote service, let's search for external remote service here. Okay. So this shows how an attacker could use default credentials to gain a foothold, then potentially deploy a web shell for persistence. What is the risk? Medium, high, unauthorized server control rather, possible data exfiltration, or backdoor installation. So for business relevance, any web-facing admin panel with default becomes a high-value target, risking compliance violations or downtime. So what is the mitigation here? You must make sure you change all default credentials immediately. Remove or restrict the manager application. Require multi-factor authentication for admin interfaces, and limit port exposure with a firewall. So now we'll move over to our third example, which is an outdated web application vulnerability. So here we are back on our Kali Linux interface. Let's run a command. So I ran this command, which is used, the Nmap here identifies the web server versions and checks for known vulnerabilities. As you can see, this vulnerability I typed here. So we can see references to outdated components, typical for Metasploitable. For additional enumeration, we can use deep to find hidden paths. So let me do that. briefly. Deep HTTP 192.168.56.102. Here you go. So this shows discovered paths. Example, this. As you can see, it is still testing and running successfully. So this reveals web directories that could contain vulnerable applications. Web directories that contain vulnerable applications. So I'll switch over to my MITRE attack very briefly here. Sorry. Okay. So I'm going to search for exploit public facing application under initial access. Here, this is it. And then you should know that if the vulnerability allows code execution, example via SQL injection or remote file inclusion, it could chain this exploit for this particular exploitation for privilege escalation. Realistic attacker part is that it probes for flaws, exploits to gain shell or database access. So what is the risk? The risk is that it can actually be critical. Full data compromise or server takeover. What is the business impact? Loss of customer data, regulatory fines, as well as reputational damage. The mitigation is that regular patching, web application firewall, input validation or sanitization, and ongoing vulnerability scanning can actually be helpful to mitigate this. So in conclusion, we used Kali tools to safely discover vulnerabilities. We discovered OpenSSH, exposed Tomcat Manager with default, as well as outdated web services. Then we mapped them to the MITRE attack using the navigator to understand real attack paths, reconnaissance to initial access to potential escalation. So this is what professional VAPT actually looks like. It is focused on business risk reduction, not exploitation. Thanks for watching our video demo. Ensure you practice this safely in isolated labs and keep building your skills. See you in our next video.